Every once in a while, people have trouble understanding that, but what they have to do is sort of see it. What would it be like if they did it to us? What would it be like if a country that had people that looked different than us? What if a Oriental country, like the Chinese, came over and they're stronger and they say, well, we have to protect our interests in the Gulf of Mexico, so we're going to occupy your land and we're going to have military bases and we want you to accept our political system and we want to give you our values and our religious values. Do you think we would resent that? I think what it would do, it would bring the American people together. All Republicans and all the Democrats and all the independents would come together and they would all believe in the Second Amendment. The really great part about the rallies we've held in these last year, a lot of enthusiasm, and I am absolutely convinced the Constitution and freedom brings people together. Brings people together that are diverse because there's no reason that we have to be challenging each other. We won't challenge other people's lifestyles, what they do with their money, and we allow people to be left alone. It's not the responsibility of the government to take care of us. It's up to us. But unfortunately, for the many, many decades now, we have had governments that want to tell us how to live and what to do with our money and tell the world what to do. But you know, if you believe in the right to life and the right to liberty, you have to believe in the right to keep the fruits of your labor, which means we can simplify the tax code. We get rid of the IRS and rid of the income tax. Now think about all that money we spend overseas. We bring that money home and our troops home, and all that money is spent. And you don't have to pay income taxes. Do you think this country would thrive? I mean, there would be such an economic boom, it would be unbelievable. And today, what is happening? People are realizing that this country is bankrupt. Young people, your age group, you're inheriting a mess and its financial burden. $60 trillion worth of entitlement obligations, and over a $9 trillion national debt. Right now, today, the announcement yesterday of the national debt going up in the last 6 months is the biggest in our history. It's going to be nearly, by the national debt this year may well go up $750 billion in 1 year by the end of this fiscal year. And that is a great burden, and it's falling on you. It is a threat to our economic freedoms and prosperity, but worst off, it's a threat to our freedoms. Because if we have to pay these bills off and we have an economic downturn, actually it's not all that bad if you have one thing. If you have your freedom, there will be no problem, and that should be our goal. The goal of all political action should be the preservation of individual liberty. Now, we have been blessed because we have lived in a very prosperous and a very free country. Far from perfect, but we were given a document that was designed to actually preserve and protect liberty, but lately it hasn't been doing a very good job. The Constitution, if you read it carefully, it does about one thing. It's not written in any way to restrain you. It's to restrain people who are, break the law and do violence. But most of the Constitution is there to restrain the government. That is what the Constitution is supposed to do. But now that it is recognized that this country is much poorer and that we need to do something about it, we need to, first off, the easiest place is to change our foreign policy, but people will tell us, don't do it. You're not going to be very patriotic if you bring these troops home. You won't be supporting the troops. But that's what they told us when I was in the military. I was in for 5 years in the 1960s when we were in Vietnam. I didn't go to Vietnam, but I was serving during that time, and it was always said, boy, we can't leave. We can't leave because if we do, there will be a domino effect, and communism will sweep Southeast Asia. Well, we did leave in a terrible way, terrible loss of life. We paid dearly in loss of life, but loss of finances. The 70s were devastating because we were paying for the guns and butter of the 60s. But you know, there was some tough times after the first year we left there, but gradually, instead of it becoming all communist, what has happened? The Chinese are better capitalists than we are. They're our bankers now. So what happened to Vietnam? What, did they go communist? No, they became westernized voluntarily. The French and the Americans were in Vietnam for 20 years. We lost so many lives, and so many Vietnamese died. And we were going to tell them how to be true westernized capitalists, and we were going to protect them against communism. And now they're westernized, they're capitalistic, we invest over there, they travel here, their president comes here. We achieved, or they achieved, and the world has achieved in peace what could not be achieved in war. And that is what we could expect. We can expect better things in the Middle East when we leave, because we will be leaving. The question is are we going to leave in a humiliated fashion, in a bankrupt fashion where the dollar is totally gone and we can't afford anything? Or are we going to leave, you know, strategically and say, look, we've done our best, few mistakes were made, but we're coming home, you're going to take over. We are now going to endorse the policy of self-determination. The country of Iraq is going to be turned over to the people of Iraq to determine what they do. But there is a way out. There's a way out. If you look at all the problems, whether they're financial, personal liberty, or foreign policy, we've gotten ourselves into this mess because we as a people have become careless. We have allowed the people to represent us in Washington who had very little respect for the rule of law and the Constitution. We need to do but one thing, and that is return to the strict adherence to the rule of law and to our Constitution. And that, of course, means that we would have a different monetary system. The founders of this country understood inflation. They understood what happened when you had the runaway inflation of the continental dollar, and that is why they were very clear in the Constitution. There would be no central bank, and only gold and silver would be legal tender. So when we finally realize that freedom has been restored in this country, guess what? There will be no Federal Reserve System at all. There will be no secretive bank printing money to bail out their buddies and bail out Wall Street. But the history of money is very clear, that when you destroy the value of money, which they've been doing for centuries, the destruction is of the middle class. The middle class is wiped out, wealth is transferred to the wealthy, and the middle class is wiped out, and the people who live in poverty, the poor, grow in numbers. And that is what we're witnessing today. And the people are way ahead of the statistics from Washington and the politicians in Washington. They're still wondering if there's going to be a recession. I mean, there's a housing crisis and there are bubbles bursting all over. There's inflation going on. The standard of living is going down, and they're still wondering, and we're living on totally borrowed money. You know, but we still do have prosperity. You go out and you walk, and there's still a lot of prosperity, but there's a big difference. There's a big difference today because the apparent prosperity that we have is all on borrowed money. And therefore, it's very, very fragile. The foreign policy is fragile. That could explode anytime. The bombs could drop on Iran soon, and which would double the price of oil overnight. And the protection of civil liberties, that is very fragile. The economy is very fragile. So we live in very, very dangerous time. And that is why there's an urgency here. A year ago or so, when I was asked to run, I said, no, I don't want to. I don't need to do this, and people aren't ready. There's nobody really cares. There's not enough people that remember what it was like, and I don't know how the young people would respond. I said, we need another generation of education, because I believe education is the key to it. You have to understand why you don't need the income tax and how you can be more prosperous. You have to understand why printing money is bad, and once you understand that, then the government will reflect those views. So I argued that there wasn't going to be a good response and not enough people. To my surprise, and I am pleasantly surprised, there are a lot more of you out there than I ever dreamed, and I thank you for it.